Okay, so we are going to start the meeting at 5:02. I need a motion to review and accept the agenda.
So moved. Review and accept the agenda.
And Jacob is going to second. Perfect. Is there anything we need to add or subtract from our discussion tonight or agenda? Okay, perfect. So if you agree with the agenda the way it is, please press your green button or wave at me so that I know that we're all good to go. 2, 3. What happened to
Becky's not
Barbara?
here.
There's Barbara. I lost her, Barbara. Okay, perfect. All right, and did Becky sign in? Becky's not here yet, right? Okay, but we have a quorum and we're all good to go. And it was unanimous. Perfect. Communications with parents, citizens, and staff. I see that we're joined by a few members of the community tonight. Is there anything that you would like to discuss before we get into our meeting?
Hi everyone, I'm Elise Hayden. I have 2 children. My son Tiller is a kindergartner at NESU, and my daughter Timber is in preschool. And I'm here with other parents of preschool age students because we realized that the pre-K funding and pre-K lottery is part of tonight's agenda, and we would like to share some input. I'm wondering if now is the best time, or perhaps when that comes up for discussion, we'd be happy to wait until then if it seems more appropriate.
I think we should probably wait until we get to that part of the meeting.
Great, thank you.
If you don't mind. Okay.
No problem at all. Thank you very much.
All right, yeah, no problem. Anyone else? Okay, so we're all here for the preschool stuff. Excellent. All right, well, we'll get to that as soon as we can. Consent agenda. Anyone want to pull anything off before we vote? Yep, Jean?
I actually don't want to pull off. I just want to point out that the reason that you're hiring so many people is not because you're suddenly rich, but because you're suddenly rich. The federal funds are focused on recovery for next year and summer. And so you are hiring a lot of interventionists through the federal recovery funds for next year so that we can boost up our support to students as they return. And the non-renewals are primarily about the fact that this year we hired a floating sub at every school with federal dollars, and we anticipate those positions ending. So that's why it's a bigger than usual personnel section. It doesn't mean anything's unusual except that it's an unusual time.
Okay. I am going to ask to pull off the audit review.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay. So consent agenda. Can I get someone to make a motion to approve without the audit review?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay. Who made the motion?
Jessica?
Jessica and
Okay. I
Barbara.
saw Barbara do the second, but I didn't know who did. Perfect. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please either wave at me, green button, whatever you want, or if you don't approve, red button, don't wave at me. Perfect. And that one is good to go. So can someone make a motion about approving the audit review, please? And then we can discuss.
I'll make that motion, so moved.
Thanks, Jacob. Someone second?
Second.
Thanks. So I just wanted to bring about on the audit review, Brenda's here with us, but I was reading through the audit review, which is a very big, boring snooze fest for the most part, because we're obviously doing lots of things right. But the one thing I wanted to bring to the attention of everyone is that I know Brenda put her 3-page synopsis of the audit review, but if you actually got down into the dirt of it, there was some things that the auditors mentioned about the e-finance system that the state has forced us to move into. And I just wanted to put it on camera and make it known that we were doing a really great job with our old software and then had to move to this e-finance stuff that has made things very, very annoying and hard to deal with. Am I correct, Brenda? So.
You are correct.
Okay. And so I'm hoping that the auditors, if they do any other Vermont school districts or supervisory unions, put that in their audit reviews too, and that it somehow gets back to the state that the software needs to go somewhere else, so that we can get back to doing our job of it, taking care of students instead of hiring staff to take care of finances and make sure that reports are actually accurate.
Yes, and it has been, and the legislature is actually putting a pause on future implementations until the software can clean up its act, for lack of a better word. I have very little confidence in its capability of doing that. And as you know, I'm not proud of a management letter that talks about all of the deficiencies. And just to put your mind at ease, we didn't ignore them, and we knew many of them. And so we've added extra layers of double checking and processes to make sure that we do have accurate information. For example, I review reports from 3 different angles before I confirm that I feel confident that that report accurately reflects what's happening. And, after doing that for over a year, we've decided that it isn't the right product for us at this time, that it was easy to move back to our old product that provided us with confidence and accuracy. So we're looking forward to taking a breath of fresh air and operating with assurances that the system is readable, understandable, transparent, and accurate.
So are you saying we can go back to our old software?
We kind of can. The mandatory date has been pushed back 6 months that everyone needs to be on it by, and it's not here yet. It's going to be pushed back to December 2022.
Okay. All right,
So
well,
we have
that's
done
cool.
a transition back, and we'll continue to work with the state on data. It is very, if I may comment as well, I really appreciate you pointing that out, Lori. I had been saying throughout last spring, when I could not provide you with monthly reports for 4 months, of the difficulty we've had with the e-finance system. The state other mandated system is the longitudinal data system, and the state is about to release the annual snapshot, which I had a preview of this week. And I and my colleagues across the state commented on how the data that's within that snapshot is in no way related to the data that we provided to the state in either of those 2 systems, which is very unfortunate. I couldn't even begin to tell you all the different places that it's just simply inaccurate. I have shared this with the secretary, and he has said that he is going to look into it. It was on his list before COVID. But this year's annual snapshot is a sad result again of both mandated systems.
Great. Gotta love it. Okay. So, having said that, anyone else want to say anything about audits, or we will go ahead and vote on the audit review? Okay. All of
I just
those.
had one question. Is
Sure.
this audit, was this the same company that did it last year, or is it is? Okay.
Yes.
All of those in favor of the audit review, please signify by saying aye or green button or waving at me. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Communication and support to the board, superintendent's report.
Usually I just give you a combination of Barstow and Otter Valley reports, but tonight I also gave you your own. Primarily to give you some background information on the equity policy, which I can touch upon at that time, and the pre-K lottery discussion. I should have said pre-K lottery and region discussion. It is time once again to revisit the region. Each year we've been doing it 1 year at a time because the state keeps saying that the legislature is going to visit this. They still have not. And therefore, we still have an approved region, and the recommendation is to continue with the region for another year and see if the legislature makes any changes to the law or not. So we can discuss that more when you get into the pre-K region section, but that's primarily the focus of tonight's superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Jean on the superintendent's report? Not seen any, then we will move on. So we are reviewing the executive limitation report for 2.6, asset protection. It does say interpretation. This isn't the final. Oh no, I guess it isn't the final. So this is
No,
the
It's interpretation.
just interpretations.
Yeah.
Okay. So I did look through it, but I guess I was thinking it was complete.
Well, no, that's because you already saw it out of Valley. So you looked through it again, thinking that it was complete.
That's what it was. Okay. So does anyone have any words of wisdom for policy 2.6 asset protection? I believe both of the actual districts have gone through this policy already for Otter Valley and for Barstow. So
Correct.
now we're just going to be looking at it through the scope of RNESU.
And this is common to all three districts.
Yep.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns regarding any of her interpretations as she set forth in the packet? And it's on page 130 of the packet.
It's because of that darn audit report.
I know. Well, I did say that was a snooze fest. So if you cannot sleep, that is what you want to be reading. I personally do not have any issues with her interpretations. Anyone else? No? Anyone else? No? No? Okay. So I think that means that your interpretations are good. We will see you next month with the final evidence and all of that. So thank you for that. Okay, we're moving on to governance process. The first thing we have is a policy for review discussion, GEQ RNESU equity policy, which is a new policy, which we don't vote on tonight because it has not yet been 30 days. But Otter Valley and the Otter Valley minutes, which are attached to the your packet, talks about some of the comments for consideration that we can discuss. And there's also Barstow has talked to Val Gardner, who is helps all of us with our policy governance, talking about a policy for equity, which is 2.9, which we could also discuss as a board. So we could continue with the RNESU equity policy, or we can switch to the policy governance policy for equity. And so I guess what I would like to do is hear from someone who wants to talk about that. And we don't need a motion because we're not making any.
It depends. If you end up switching to the policy 2.9, which would be an executive limitations policy, then I would suggest that you start it as a first reading once again.
Okay.
If you're continuing on with the one that was, then you don't need to take any action. You're just halfway through the process.
All right. So Barbara, you have your hand up. What are you thinking?
Well, right. I'm wondering, is there a
Uh-oh. I can't hear you.
No, we can't hear you, Barbara.
Barbara, I can't hear you. Somehow I think you just froze.
Yeah.
While she's unfreezing,
Yeah.
piece of feedback that I appreciated from the meeting last week or 2 weeks ago was the observation that if people of color aren't involved in drafting things like this, it may not benefit them, or we may think it does and it doesn't.
We lost you from.
I hate Zoom. I hate how it hates me. It hates me so much.
We lost the beginning.
Oh man. Okay. I have tried to figure out why it does this to me, but I think it's personal. It just hates me. So who's on the committee, or can we know who's on the committee? And if so, still with me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are there people of color on it? And if not, is there a way to get some people of color on the committee?
Happy to look up for you, because it's not in my head, who all is on the committee. And while I cannot answer that question directly, it is clearly predominantly white. The committee, however, on their own has been reaching out to a variety of community members to get more direct input into the policy. As well, I have put it in staff and parent emails for the past 3 weeks to get some input, and actually got some really valid input that caused, pointed out where we were lacking in an area. And the committee is seeking to increase its own diversity as well by reaching out to some community members and some students to get more voices on the committee. But I'd have to look up who's actually on it. It's a variety of different staff members.
Thank you. I apologize for the background noise. And if it's okay, I just wanted to, can I follow up? I don't know if there's other
Go ahead.
waiting. There's a heater in the background that's making noise. Part of what might have gotten missed when I asked it first time was that it was pointed out at the meeting 2 weeks ago that it's important to have people of color helping draft these policies, or we may very well have great intentions and still not be actually benefiting the people we're trying to benefit.
Perfect. Brenda, you had wanted to talk.
Now, the only thing I was thinking is that I don't think we have to have just one policy. I think that the executive limitations add teeth to the RNESU equity policy. I think you can have both. And we kind of talked about that at Barstow. Jacob.
Yeah,
I
go ahead,
agree.
Jacob.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jacob.
You can speak first. I was just going to echo many of those thoughts. I think Barbara raises a good question. And I like the idea of putting it in the executive limitations. Then we have capacity to monitor it over time, as well as revise it if we view it as just a starting place.
Yeah, and basically that's what I was going to say, and a little bit of what Jacob just touched on. I think the benefit of the policy governance is that we can start very broadly to make sure that we do capture as much and then narrow it down, to as we see fit. But I think it might be worth taking a look at, and keeping the other as a good part too.
The equity committee saw the policy 2.9, and they felt that it kind of was cleaner and clearer than the one that they had drafted, and understood what the Barstow folks just talked about, the teeth behind putting it in as an executive limitations. This would require a report annually on all of these things in a way that the other version doesn't. And it also, my feeling is that it also addresses some of the concerns that came up at the Otter Valley Board about the other policy, because of the 7 points within it covers so many different areas. So the recommendation from the equity committee is to go with 2.9.
So they don't see a reason to go with both, or that was not an option for them at the time.
It really wasn't an option. I'm not really sure why you would have both. Now, I can do admin memos under a policy, and it's possible that the equity committee will want to take pieces out of the other one to flesh out this as an admin memo, which is kind of an administrative level policy. It's almost like the other one is more of a statement, an equity statement.
What one is the equity statement? The
first
policy 2.9 or the first one? Okay.
The first one could be turned into an equity statement, perhaps.
Okay.
And kind of a public vision.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Which you could vote on as such too.
So what's the pleasure of the board? Barbara?
Well, if it's the equity policy is recommending the policy governance policy, am I hearing correctly?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that would then make it part of a monitoring report and something that has to be adhered to. That's also what I'm hearing you say?
Yes.
Okay, I would be in favor of that, personally.
Okay, so I'm hearing a lot of evidence that you might actually be more inclined to have the policy 2.9. So at this point, if that is your inclination, if someone wants to make that motion, they should do so.
I'll make the motion that we adopted as a first reading.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay. Any other discussion regarding policy 2.9 at this point?
Can I add one thing? I don't know, just to, if we are making this, whatever, if it's perceived as a switch from what we've been doing to something else, that we make it as clear as possible to our constituents that we're not shying away from this discussion, that we're trying to, if anything, strengthen it, just so it doesn't get misinterpreted.
Sure, okay.
Thanks.
Well, I guess that's the next question, is that if we do go with this, are we, I don't want to use the word scrap, but are we taking the other policy and turning it into a statement, or are we asking Jean to make it an admin memo? Have you any thoughts on that?
I wonder what the committee that worked on that statement or policy, how they feel about it, how they feel it could be of greatest value to the community and the schools and the.
I think that's a very good
to them?
question. Yeah, I think that's a good question. I would take that question back to the committee, which meets before your next RNESU meeting. They may want to take that and turn it into a statement for your stamp of approval.
Okay. So how does everyone else feel about that? Okay. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So then at this time, I'm going to go ahead and take, I think we should go ahead and vote on the new PG policy for discussion, since we have a motion on the floor. So all of those that approve adding PG policy for discussion 2.9 equity to our executive limitations, please signify by saying aye. Okay, it's unanimous. Excellent. Now this will be just for RNESU, and then we'll also bring it back to Otter Valley, correct?
Right, and Barstow has already passed first reading as well.
Okay. So we will bring that back. And then as far as the GEQ policy, I think right now what we are asking you to do, and tell me if you want a motion for this, is that we are kicking it back to the equity committee and ask them what they would like to do with it.
Yeah, I don't think I need a motion. I can take it back to them.
All right. So if that's okay with everybody on the board, is everyone okay with that? Okay, awesome. Thank you for your discussion points around that. Appreciate it. So moving on, we are going to our pre-K region discussion and action. As Jean pointed out, every year at this time, we have the ability to either continue our pre-K region or dismantle it. Our pre-K, yeah, do you want to talk about?
Yeah, do you want me to give a little background? Jacob hasn't had it before, and we have some community.
Well, that's what I was trying to wrap my head around what I exactly wanted to say. So, our pre-K region has been around since the beginning of pre-K regions, but we've also had pre-K in this region for 30 years. Has it been that long? Which is, we were groundbreaking at the time to have pre-K, universal pre-K for our entire district and supervisory union, where we had pre-K available to all kids, and it was free. So the legislature a few years ago decided to decided to put it, ask their school boards and if they wanted to have a pre-K region or if they wanted to give vouchers. We had hearings and decided that we wanted to keep our pre-K region because we already had existing preschools in our district, 4 of them to be exact, and that it was going well and they were well attended. And I feel like I'm screwing this up. So Jean, fill in for me where I'm missing parts.
No, you're absolutely right. So RNESU has offered pre-K to families for about 30 years and has had programs in the past at Neshabie, Leicester, Whiting, Barstow, and Lothrop. In recent years, the Leicester, Whiting, Sudbury program all moved over to Whiting, and we got a private childcare partner to address concerns that families had about pre-K only being 10 hours a week. And so somebody who's at Whiting can get full day childcare at the parent expense like they would privately, but the free pre-K embedded right into it. And it's been very successful. I don't know, Brenda, I'm not sure, maybe 10 years ago now, 8 to 10 years ago, the state passed Act 166, which is the universal pre-K bill, and mandated that all regions either develop 10-hour programs. The universal pre-K is universal for 10 hours. And so every district had to either develop them or form partnerships or subsidize parents going to pre-K programs for up to 10 hours a week. It has to be qualified in the eyes of the state. There's a number of hoops that you have to go through. So at the time, all districts were encouraged to develop regions for their pre-K programs. And so we developed a region, and our region includes our 8 towns and any qualified pre-K program in our 8 towns. When we began, there were our internal programs plus the Brandon Parent Child Center. And at the time there was a private provider. The private provider had dropped out over time. The Brandon Parent Child Center has been very active up until last month. We aren't sure of their future right now, but they've been around for the past 8 years, but I think COVID might have done a number on them. But we still have our other programs. We have been attempting to get pre-K or childcare partners at the south end of our district at either Barstow or Lothrop, and have not yet succeeded at that. We potentially have another childcare partner interested in the Sudbury school, but they have not yet returned to us with a proposal. They just reached out to us. Our pre-K programs are almost always full. This year was slightly less so. There were parents who didn't want to send their kids to any childcare or pre-K programs during COVID. You usually receive between 2 and 4 voucher requests a year. It goes to the RNESU Board because the RNESU Board oversees the SU-wide universal pre-K program. Our region, which was approved by the state, says that if we don't have capacity in our pre-K programs, then you would subsidize out of district, out of the region. I don't believe it's possible we did do that once. Guy, were you part of that one? Is he still here? I don't see him. Oh, he's still here. He has a child on his lap. Possibly the child. I don't know. Anyway, we might have done it once because we were full. I know that we came close to it once. I can't recall if it ended up happening. So where we stand now is in the last couple of years, the legislature has talked about revisiting the universal pre-K law and having a discussion at their level on whether regions should or should not exist. For 3 years now, they have not had that discussion. But as a result of wanting to have that discussion, the agency has only been approving us for a year at a time, pending what the legislature is going to do. And so the last 2 years we came back and the board continued the region. The benefits of the region from the SU's perspective are that the relationships with the families and the schools begin at age 3. NESUB is a great example. It runs 2 programs and it is very full every year. And there is a relationship that begins that young with the families. We, as we said earlier, we have had the programs in place for 30 years. If the reasons for the voucher request that came forward were that some parents had difficulty managing a 10-hour program with their work schedule, et cetera. And so that's why we went out and solicited a private childcare partner to help address that issue, which is above and beyond what the school district had to do. And I applaud you guys for letting that happen. Should the region end, it would mean that the subsidies that come from the state that subsidize the 10 hours of pre-K would go anywhere, potentially leading to the closure of the in-district programs. It looks like it would. We can't know that for sure. That's a crystal ball guess. And again, affecting those early relationships with families. Last year, with a number of the parents on this call participating, this board agreed to set up a 1-year 5-student lottery to allow a voucher, for lack of a better word, to go out of the region. It was an interesting process. It took us 9 people to get to the 5 students. A number of people changed their minds, actually stayed in district after they applied. But we did eventually find the 5. And it was again, just 1 year. So the 2 decisions in front of you tonight is, do you wish to continue the region for 1 more year? And if that answer is yes, then do you wish to continue the lottery for 1 more year? Brenda Fleming, did I miss anything there? Jacob?
And correct me if I'm wrong, but we have funds budgeted to continue the lottery for 1 more year if we decide to do so?
We actually do.
But only did I read that right? But only for 5 heads?
Correct.
Well, for 5 heads plus the ones that were already in the other licensed program in district, which was the Rutland County Parent Child Center at Brandon. And I think there was maybe about 6 other students there.
Right, that's the piece probably that we missed, is that within our region, if there are qualified programs, which the only one in our region is the Rutland County Parent Child Center at Brandon, we can send, kids can go there and get the voucher.
And we're not sure of the future of Brandon. So with what Brenda just said, you could change the 5 to 10. We think, can we, Brenda? I mean,
I don't know.
You could do one of 2 things. You might want to set it now at 5, and should before August we hear that the Parent Child Center definitely isn't coming back, we could come back and you can always add to it as well.
Okay, so before we go any further, let's get a motion on the floor discussing the region. So I would accept Elise, just a moment. We need a motion on the floor, please.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I appreciate your wanting to talk, but I do need a motion first. So can I get a motion on the floor, either to continue our pre-K region or something else? Barbara.
I move that we continue the pre-K region.
Okay. We need a second.
I'll second.
Okay. Now we can discuss. Okay. So Elise, you said you wanted to speak, so please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So as I said before, I'm Elise Hayden. I live in Leicester. I have a son who's a kindergartner and a daughter, Timber, who's at Quarry Hill School, which is an out-of-district preschool, qualified preschool provider. And And my daughter was the lucky recipient of one of the lottery subsidies last year. So to give some background, especially to Jacob, who's new to this, this is my 4th year coming in front of the board, advocating for universal pre-K for my children who both will have attended out of district placements. When my husband and I originally came to the board requesting a voucher, it's because we were both working in Middlebury at the high school, and it was about transportation and trying to get our children to that provider and work within times, and that was viewed as an issue of convenience. And as I dug more into this, I realized that at the time RNESU was one of only 2 or 3 pre-K regions in the state still existing. And so I started researching, and I guess I should back up for a second and say I really appreciate that this district was groundbreaking, and they were the first to offer universal pre-K, and that was ahead of its time. And now I would challenge the board to say you're the last region standing. You're the last place in the whole state where pre-K funding has a geographical barrier. It's literally a wall around this school district and its towns, where families, for whatever the need is, whether it's convenience or something else, can't go out of district. And so we're not coming to you criticizing the system. We're asking you to think, as other districts have, about trying to meet the needs of the young people, your young learners who, my son went to Corey Hill and he's at Neshabie, and he's part of the community, and he's had a great first year there. And I think it's doable. We also want families to be able to access this. I was trying to think about how I could, like the analogy I could draw with this funding and what it feels like for families. We're talking about, it's not small potatoes. It's for next school year, $3,536. So that's 5 or 6% of the median household income in Vermont, which is not a lot, but per month, that's like 3/4 of the monthly income for a family. That's like, 5%, it's not a big deal. But how about we look at it this way? So many of us, if we're income eligible, receive subsidies during stimulus payments during the coronavirus, right? First a $1,200, then a $600, and $1,400. That adds up to $3,200. Imagine if, because you lived in Brandon or because you lived in Leicester, you weren't eligible for that, whereas everyone else in the entire state of Vermont was eligible to receive those stimulus payments. That's how we feel as parents of children, of pre-K children. Our friends in neighboring towns, they have the subsidy, and it goes a long way, especially during a pandemic, right? When people may not have the same kind of working hours as they did before, or they have limitations. They have to be home with their kids more. I just think this is an opportunity for RNESU to move forward, as other districts have, and open up opportunities, and also have confidence that your programs are great and that families want to go them. It sounds like they're almost always full, right? We're not trying to strip down and lead to the closure of these programs. We're just asking for the same kind of access that other pre-K kids have. And in closing, I appreciated what Barbara said earlier when we were talking about equity policies. And she said, something with great intentions, these policies have great intentions, but they may not actually be benefiting the people they're designed to benefit. And as written, Act 166 right now is not benefiting some of the youngest, most vulnerable individuals, the 3 to 5-year-olds who it's designed to support. So I would challenge you to think about dismantling the pre-K region as it currently stands, to be in line with the rest of districts around the state, and allow our kids to have the same opportunities that other kids do. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything to say? So I would challenge you a little bit, Elise, on what you said as far as this is my own opinion. So, and I don't vote. So I want to say that when Act 166 was put into place, the legislature actually looked at RNESU as what they wanted to see pre-K in all supervisory unions and districts throughout the state. And so that's why they put a dollar limit on, or a dollar amount on each voucher, because they wanted all the supervisory unions or the individual school districts to create their own programs. And so when it came time to create a district or a boundary, which we did in RNESU, it was because we already had programs. And so therefore we wanted our kids to stay here with us, so that we could start those relationships at the age of 3, 4, and 5. And then it never cost anyone anything to go. So the fact that now, other regions around us just said, no, we're not going to create our own programs. You guys can go wherever you want, kind of is a little bit of a disservice to us here when you tell us that we're not allowing everyone else to have the same privilege as everyone else in other districts, because that's not necessarily the case. In other districts before Act 166, there were no preschool programs in Middlebury or in Rutland that were run by the school districts to find these students and to help them become lifelong learners early on, instead of coming into kindergarten and be struggling. And I was one of those strugglers when I started first grade, because we didn't even have kindergarten in Middlebury at the time. I almost flunked out of kindergarten or first grade because I didn't know any letters. I could count to 10. That was it. So the reason I say that is because we here in RNESU have done everything we can to provide education to those 3 to 5 year olds. And so we're not trying to strip anyone of anything, but we are trying to protect our programs, because if those walls were to possibly come down, then, if everybody scatters and goes to all of these other programs, we could potentially lose our programs. And that is something that I would hate to see happen. Jean.
Thank you, Lori. I really appreciate listening to what you said, and it made me realize, the point of Act 166 was to ensure really that families without means had access to high quality pre-K education. And families without means generally are not going to go out of district as well, because it's very difficult to do. The piece that I'm not sure I made clear is that our pre-K programs, the cost of our pre-K programs are not borne by the taxpayers. They're borne by the state monies for the subsidies. And that's why I say that if we don't have a region, then we may not be able to provide local pre-K programs where some of our neediest families would need them in the local schools to access. So for me, this has always kind of been an equity issue, not the same direction of equity as Elise very articulately stated, but more an equity of access to high quality pre-K programs for the families who aren't usually able to access that.
Guy.
I think you guys have done a nice job of laying out the history of this whole thing. But what I'm concerned about is the present situation. And bottom line for me is my family can't access the funds that everybody else in the state can. And so I'm wondering if anybody can speak to why families that are unable to get their kids to your programming, why there's not any leeway to provide vouchers for that. Because I understand keeping it kind of tight because you want to protect your program, but keeping it so tight that it is not equitable. We keep throwing around that word. It is not equitable. My family cannot access the money that every other family with kids my kids' age is able to access. So I feel repressed by the location that I happen to live, and my work situation and my wife's work situation. We cannot access your programming. It's not doable. We're not going to quit our jobs so that we can bring our kids to your program. So can somebody speak to how you reconcile that, where families just can't bring their kids to your program and they cannot get the money that is, I would argue, is our tax money, because it's coming from the state, as you said, and we pay taxes to the state. So It may not be our local taxes, but it is our taxes.
Does anyone want to speak to that?
I can, make an attempt. I think it's, again, when the region was set up with the idea that we offer 5 high quality programs, and at the time 7. It's still 5 internal high quality and the parent child center. And there will always be somebody who prefers to go to Middlebury or Stafford. There will always be somebody like that.
I think I will also, I think I've said this before in the past, when my own kids were in preschool, I worked in Rutland. My husband was a dairy farmer, couldn't get off the farm. We found a daycare provider that was willing to transport our kids to a preschool program here within the district, which was excellent for us. I'm not saying that you haven't looked at all avenues, but I think there are other ways to access preschool. Sometimes you have to dig for them though. And I don't mean that to be negative, so.
Yeah, just once again, I want to say we're talking about the past again. The present is every family in Vermont is supposed to be able to access this money to bring their kids to preschool. That's the idea. So you had your kids in a different time. I'm sorry, but at this
only
time,
5 years ago. It's not that far away.
okay. Well, so if it was difficult for you, it should be difficult for everybody else. And you found a way. That's great. That doesn't mean that there's an avenue for everybody. That's an anecdotal, one-person personal experience where we are a community of a lot of people with a lot of constraints.
Barbara?
I know this is such a complicated issue.
I'd like to say something.
Joanna, you're not, I will call on you next, but Barbara was next.
I mean, I know this is a complicated issue, and I don't think every year I've heard it, I've understood a little bit more, but what I do hear is, I don't think it's not quite so much about living in the past, it's explaining why what has happened and how it came to be, which is crucial to the discussion, because since we were doing this way ahead of the curve, we had something and continue to have something that other districts chose not to have. And so we're trying to protect an asset that we developed that still exists in the present. It is a present benefit that we do provide all families in our district, but that we have to protect or it might go away. And I feel like there's like a few nuances that are like getting twisted up in the discussion where they're actually like, we're not trying to prevent anyone from getting this pre-K. We're in fact encouraging everyone to take advantage of it. But when it goes outside of our boundaries, then we have to pay, but our money should be going to the kids in district because that's how we keep these programs going. So I understand the dilemma for sure, but I also understand that what we're talking about really is a present day issue that has a history that needs to be understood in order for it to be fully comprehended. So, yeah.
I'm not sure which Joanna had wanted to speak before, but I will let you speak now. I apologize that I interrupted you.
Just a time check, it's 5:50. You may end up tabling so we can go on to the next meeting.
Okay, but we'll let Joanna speak.
She's having trouble, I think.
Okay, well, we'll go to Brenda, and maybe when Joanna can come back, we'll let her speak then. Go ahead, Brenda.
Before I would feel comfortable voting, I would really love to have a better sense of, I understand the parents' perspective who are here, but I know there are parents who are not here, who maybe cannot be here and may not have the means or the ability to articulate, or even the awareness that their children could lose a program if we voted to do away with it. I'm concerned about them. And before I feel comfortable voting one way or another, I just need a sense of the whole picture I mean, I respect what every parent here has said, but I also know that we are responsible to every parent, including the ones who are not here.
Okay, thank you, Brenda.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure, go ahead, Jess.
Jean, you mentioned that this was something that's been going on now 3 years pending legislature. Any status on if it's going to continue to be tabled or?
You know, because of COVID coming in partway through last year's session, it's not on anyone's, I can't even get a status right now.
It's not on anybody's radar.
It was expected at the beginning of last year's legislative session. It was talked about as coming back again. And I don't know where their discussion is going to go.
Okay.
I mean, it's not a predetermined conclusion to where they're, it's a case, and even the Secretary of Education feels that the entire universal pre-K bill has so many problems to it that the whole thing needs to be overhauled. And I don't know when or if that'll happen.
Because I mean, it just seems, and again, like Barbara had said, I learn a little bit more every time we discuss this, but it's like built on a house of cards here. And we really don't have a perfect option until they can do something to help support us a little bit. So.
Right.
So is Joanna still with us? Because we are probably going to have to table this, but I wanted Joanna to be able to speak if she is still here. All right.
I think she's a little bit delayed in her internet access.
Okay. Well, her microphone is off. So, but, oh, now it's on.
Joanna, it might be easier if you kept
Hi
it.
there. I'm sorry
No, it's not quite.
about that. I live in the middle of Moose, so I don't have a lot of internet access here. Not working? Okay. Are you able to hear me now? I apologize.
Go ahead. Oh. Nice. Okay. Brenda.
May I jump in for 1 minute? I know we're running out of time here.
Not yet.
There's Joanna.
There she is again. Joanna, maybe if you turn off your camera.
I am. Goodness gracious.
There we go. There you are.
Yeah. I'll try my best. I live in the boonies. So I appreciate what everyone said. I think I got most of it on all sides. I don't want to, good gracious me. Are you able to hear me, or I'll just write a message?
You keep coming in and
okay.
out, but we can hear you right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't want to, belabor this point, but it is and I understand all this. And I am an advocate of universal pre-K, and I am one that requested a voucher. I'm a mother of 5 children. My last 2 are twins. So a voucher is a wonderful blessing, but twins are a wonderful blessing as well. But the likely of getting 2 lottery slots, if that was a choice or anything like that, is a little different for me in this particular children's case. So I'm in a unique situation for that. My other unique situation is I live in Goshen, which is Addison County, but RNESU by choice, not too long ago, that it wasn't a choice town. And I am a homeschooler, So therefore, I have chosen a different path last year, 3 of them. And, I understand the access that is available to some, even the pre-K up here in Goshen, they will bus to, but they will not pick us up here where we live in Goshen. They will come close, but turn around because of the way we live, the way our road is, the Goshen-Ripton Road, there are no turnarounds. So I just wanted to address that one particular point, that there are creative ways, but when you do choose to live where we live, the creative ways get pushed down and there aren't as many. So that's just my small story. I moved here in 2016. I chose to homeschool, was blessed with twins, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. Vermont does universal pre-K. I've never had anything like this. I'm so excited. And my kids didn't go to NESU, and it's not our community because of my husband's work. Now I do homeschool.
Well, she's not there anymore. So it is 5:50.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's
Sorry.
okay. And I understand. So what I would ask you to do, Joanna, is if you could type what you want to say into the chat, that might be helpful. Or
For next meeting, try calling in instead of video. There's a
Right.
call-in number in the calendar invite too.
right. So we are going to have to table this discussion
Okay.
because there is another board meeting that starts in 2 minutes. So if everyone is okay with that on the board, please signify by saying aye or just to table it to next meeting. And so we will continue this discussion at our May meeting and go from there. Okay? And I apologize to everyone, but we do have another meeting to go to at 6. So our next meeting is Wednesday, May 19th. We will bring back the pre-K region discussion along with the lottery discussion. So those of you who asked for vouchers, that will also be on next month's meeting agenda, and we will make sure that we get to that first. So our next meeting is Wednesday, May 19th at 5 o'clock. It should be another Zoom meeting. I don't expect that we'll be able to be in person. So having said that, I would take a motion to adjourn. Barbara?
Second.
Okay, so all of those that adjourn, you can leave the meeting as your voice of approval.